So I've been looking at this book that I forced myself to buy, and I forced myself to read. Mostly because the topic is a good topic. It is definitely affecting many churches, and in particular small churches, mainline churches, and older churches. So, there's not really a revolution that needs to occur. It's just simply that God's people need to stand up for God's church. And that's basically the type of life I lived for 42 years as a pastor, trusting in the tithes and offerings. Now he says they may no longer be sufficient, or may no longer work. So what can you do about it? So I'd like to turn to a page in a book whereby he kind of states a thesis in the form of a question. Ideas at a glance. In the United States, Christians tend to compartmentalize business and mission as if the two are mutually exclusive. Around the world, this is not the case. Christians understand the need to engage and pursue holistic transformation in communities, though not only spiritual, but also economic means. The coming revolution in church economics. Now, I like to dispute the whole idea of a revolution and even the term church economics. The coming revolution in church economics will be defined by addressing a single question that churches are already already beginning to ask. How can we leverage our assets to bless the community and generate sustainable income? To rightly answer the question, churches need to think correctly, strategically, and creatively. Now notice how it's phrased: assets, sustainable income. Okay, you're not even seeing the language of traditional life church, such as offerings to God. Let me emphasize over and over again that anything coming into a church is an offering to God. So to refer to sustainable income is for me transforming this whole thing into the world of business and economics rather than the spiritual realm. However, I must give the authors credit for attempting to dig into this topic and to challenge people to think, do you really want your church to be classified as a business? Do you really want your church to be doing what the one church that I told you about, being wrapped up and involved in selling sausages that were made by the church people for sale, and become salespersons for something like a business, but they don't call it a business? And that little church brought in $60,000 a year by doing that. Now you might say that's wonderful. Well, I was an interim there, so just before I left, I couldn't resist, and in a message I had to challenge them to make disciples of Jesus Christ and not necessarily make sausages for sale. I don't know that I was received too well in my message, but I was only an interim pastor, so I was able to flee in safety and not have anybody do me any harm for making such a statement. But the question is, what do you really want in a so-called church? Do you want it to be what he's dreaming it could be, namely fusing it with, uniting it with the world of business? Thank you for watching. This concludes the video.